of their cabins. There are dangers in the dockland world, to be sure. But while death has nodded my way more than a few times, it has never come as close to me as it has to others. Down the shore, the oyster catchers are readying their craft to enter the adjoining rivers that feed into the Hellas. I can hear their stays being tightened and their anchors being raised. Men's deep voices rise up in the dark, intermingled now and then with the higher-pitched shouts of women. Fishing is an equal opportunity endeavor, where both sexes work together. Not all professions are so balanced, but fishing requires a closeness, a trust, and a sharing that some types of work do not. Duties are shared, and earnings are spread out equally. I could have chosen this work once, back when I first came to the island of Jagged Reach and the city of Pressia. But I chose another way, a better way, which shares many of the same advantages. And I am not one to look back. I have never been, and never will be. I slip past the oyster piers and continue on to where the warehouses loom in huge dark blocks of timber and stone. Here the docks are longer and more heavily timbered to handle the ocean-going freighters and monstrous haulers. Here the heavy-laden carriers must load and unload their goods, everything from timber and steel to woolens and appliances. Yet what comes here is not what goes out, because their services benefit two worlds. This island lies between the Fey lands and the human provinces, so the bonds of trade, some of it illegal, bind our two peoples in ways that transcend both worlds. In most places, there is a defined separation, a refusal of the one world to even believe in the presence of the other. But on these islands, in the safety of the waters of the Hellas, it is possible for each to engage with the other. Here, the wards that separate the two worlds have weakened sufficiently to allow for Fey and human to interact and coexist on a different and more productive scale. It surprised me at first, this forbidden intermingling of Fey and human. I had been taught it was an impossibility, that the wards of the Fey forbade it from happening. But as with so many things we are taught in our childhood, there are exceptions to every rule. And Jagged Reach has been one such exception for 1,000 years. Yes, there are rules governing the exchanges between human and Fey, and yes, some restrictions still apply. But people, no matter their origins, gravitate toward one another. And the more you interact, the harder it becomes to see your neighbor as all that different from yourself. It is one of the things I have come to love most about my life in Jagged Reach. How I see around me every day a multiplicity of people all different from me, amid which my own green skin and leafy hair stand out not a bit. Besides, how else can you explain my having fallen in love as I have? How else can you explain my willingness to risk so much for a human? Someone who is considered by most of the Fae as an impossible match? I slide along the walls of the nearest warehouse, deep within the shadows, looking hard at what lies about me. Discovery now would be disastrous, so I cannot make a wrong move at this point. My eyes shift from one docking site to another, from one vessel to a second, from one worn plankway filled with movement to a score of others, so that nothing escapes my notice. I spy the dock lookout as he approaches from some distance ahead of me, well out in the bright exposure of the moonlight, his attention fixed on the piers. I know him instantly. He is a mean piece of work we call crouch for his tendency to walk with a bent, lurching gait, his head lowered. He shambles rather than walks. But his strength is enormous. I have seen him brutalize more than one unhappy soul in the supposed pursuit of his duties. Mostly, I think, he enjoys hurting others, especially when so many he encounters are smaller and weaker than he is. I once watched him kill a man by twisting his head about and dumping his lifeless body aside like